Hey guys, and welcome to Star Tech Progression or Star Technology Progression Log 3. I actually have some huge things to show you. I've been playing a lot more this week. I've been feeling very good about getting on, and I'm very excited to show you what's going on. So first off, we're gonna go ahead and start off with the big things. And the big things is the main base is started under construction. We have the central tower here. This changed in design. Actually, while I was doing more creative mode testing, ultimately the design uh, changed in some small ways and in some larger ones. I decided that I really wasn't a huge fan of the central tower. It was just a little bit too small for what I wanted it to be. And also, I want this to be a space for both ME drives as well as crafting CPUs. Auto crafting and stuff will go somewhere else. I haven't decided about that stuff specifically. Um, but we are going to see some AE utilities that will be going in these, I guess, server racks, for lack of a better term. We also over here have the beginnings of a powerhouse. And when I call this a powerhouse, I fucking mean it. This is 32 max level steam engines for a grand total of 4.4 million stress units. When converted to RF at maximum capacity, which will require like 600 neodymium magnets and another 600 normal ones, it'll be about 200,000 RF per tick, which is uh, I don't remember how much that is. It's 50,000 EU, which is um like 1.5 amps IV. Uh, all of this stuff will be run off these kelp farms over here. These kelp farms, I actually spent the money coins to make sure it's always daytime, so they're running 24/7. 24/7, and we have a total of 64 large farms over here, all that will all make kelp. Only one of these wings is currently working. What this does is it produces just kelp that goes onto these belts. These belts then bring it all the way over here, where it then gets, go up all these conveyor belts, which then comes across over here, gets dropped in stacks at a time and then divided up amongst 5 of these rows, where it's then smoked into dried kelp and then compressed into dried kelp blocks for fuel. Unfortunately, how I'm powering this is I'm just using a simple motor over here from Create, which basically allows you to turn RF into stress units. This doesn't produce enough stress units to actually run this fast enough to keep up with how much kelp we get from the farms, which is really quite a ridiculous amount. It's a lot. I was told it's 2 of these farms per engine over there, so hopefully this will be enough. If it's not, I can always knock out this back wall over here and extend this a couple more. It wouldn't really be too much of a problem. I'd have to, it would take a little while, but it wouldn't be like a serious issue, especially since well, first off, is I'm not gonna need all of those engines running anytime soon anyway. I'm not gonna need all of that power, and I don't even have the ability to afford all the magnets to consume all that power. So, oh, excuse me, sorry. Over time, that the powerhouse will slowly grow in the amount of power it's producing. Um, in terms of what it will do now, actually, I just need to get it functional. Um, how I built this stuff is I actually built both of these things in creative mode and then used the create schematic cannon in order to build both of them in. Each one of these things, by the way, took like 3 hours for the schematic cannon to build. Uh, this thing was running actually after I got off last night. I started it around uh I want to say like 11:30. And I don't think it was done until like 2, and this one I think like took like 3.5 hours. Um, Unfortunately, the way the schematic can paste stuff in, it often doesn't actually complete the full build when it comes to belts and stuff, unfortunately. And sometimes, let's see if it did it over here. I don't think it did. Oh yes. So actually, really funny is I didn't even feed this a belt. It didn't get belts. But somehow it still placed one anyway, and I'm not exactly sure how it did this or why it put it here. Because in the creative test design, there wasn't a belt here. So I don't know why it's there. But yeah, so I do have to actually get these in a functional state. Um, so none of them are actually not operating. It's going to require a little bit of AE work. I'm going to have to jumpstart the whole system with my current. power setup over here. I'm gonna have to set up like the ME controller, run some cables over here. All of this will use storage buses off these super chests, which will then pull the dried kelp blocks into interfaces over here, which will then drop it along belts where it will get picked up by all these mechanical arms, which I'm gonna have to pick up and set back down in order to properly set them for the burners. One thing to note is these burners will only have half the heat they can get in order for true maximum boiler status. Both size and water will be maxed out. So I should say the level 9 steam engines rather than maximum level, I would say. Um, it's max for StarTech, which is technically you can superheat the burners, but they're really really obnoxious in the sense that when you want to you can put max level RPM or max RPM encased fans against a basic burner, and that will make it a superheated, which consumes fuel 32 times faster, but you get maximum possible heat. Unfortunately, you can only use the encased fans if they're against the side of the burner, not if they're below the burner. So you can't actually make all 9 of them superheated, and it means it's absolutely ginormous. It would be much, much wider than it is now, and I'd probably only be able to fit half the engines in here. So it's not even really worth it, um, unfortunately. So instead, we just have an absolute shitload of them. um, because I believe this is for, yes, okay, so it is 32 engines in total, because it's 8, 16, 24, 32. Last time I checked, I believe it was 4.4 million, but I could be wrong. I don't really remember the exact number, but I do know it's over 4 million. So it's going to be an absolute monstrous amount. This will keep us going for quite some time. By the time we actually need to upgrade it, I can rip the steam engines out here and put new generators ahead of time. So not only is this good for now, it also offers us the space for changes later on. We have lots and lots of room in here for generators, for some fuel production if necessary, though that can go somewhere else. Um, I can also tear out, say, part of the farm as well. Part of the farm can get torn out and we can do fuel production in here if necessary, or we can also start farming if we need to, depending on what we want to cook in here, make in here, we can also do that. So I am really happy with how both of these things turned out. I think they offer me some exceptionally, insanely powerful infrastructure going forward for a good while. As well as the opportunity to renovate all this stuff for power infrastructure later on. So I think this was an amazing investment, and it really all wasn't that expensive in the grand scheme of things. The most expensive things were actually the steam engines themselves, just because all of these tanks are uh, just the sheer number of tanks. It was about 2,300 tanks, for instance, which was a lot. It was a lot. So it was 4.6 thousand copper ingots and 7 times, so like 15,000, 16,000 wooden planks in order to make all the barrels for the fluid tanks, because the fluid tanks take a barrel. And you can actually, I ended up making these things in the assembler actually, with just feeding them massive amounts of logs. And I was making fluid tanks for hours, literally hours. It took like 2 days to make all the fluid tanks. The farm was much quicker. I was able to build that yesterday. But that was pretty much all I did yesterday was work on getting the farm done. And it did take a couple of hours between designing it in creative mode, pasting it in, and then finding all the resources to paste it in. Um, but yeah, so we have these big smokestacks too, which I really, really love. I think they're great. Then over here, this is sort of like a greenhouse style where it has like little air gaps and stuff. I really like the way all this stuff turned out. These metal girders are pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things. They're just like some iron plates and some andesite alloy. We have a monstrous amount of glass up here. I was so in the original design, I was trying to use a different kind of glass than the fancy white stained glass, because I ended up using this glass in Monty Factory, and I was like, oh, I can't use that block again. But I'm already reusing the same block I did in Ocean Block 2. I did plank brick patterns in Ocean Block 2, and I decided that I really like the color of mangrove, and I really like the plank brick pattern. I think it's a really nice block. It's gotta be one of my favorite ones. Um, where I also ended up using gray stacked concrete again. It's a very similar color palette from Ocean Block 2, which is fine. I didn't really get to experience that color palette as much as I wanted to. Oh, I hope here. Let me close my window, guys. I'm sorry. Give me like 10 seconds. All right, my apologies. Um, I didn't really get to experience that color palette as much as I would have wanted to, given just how my interest in Ocean Block 2 went, which was it fell off a cliff, pretty quickly. Which was highly unfortunate, but it is what it is. But we're gonna be dumping a lot more time into Star Technology. Star Technology, I imagine, is gonna be 1,000 hours minimum. I don't actually have a reference number for that, other than Star Technology is attempting to be the modern GTNH. I don't exactly know how long it's gonna take us to get up here, but this is UHV stuff. And UHV, I don't remember how long that took in Monty Factory. 700 hours, 800 hours, something like that. Um, but everything is a lot more expensive in this pack. One thing is one big change that will be going forward is I usually do lots of passive systems, things that don't run on demand. However, I've been told that in Star Technology that doesn't really scale all that well, just because the number of things you need to do and how fast it is and the power requirements and a bunch of other reasons. And while I have to fix this. And while I was initially resistant to the idea of doing everything on demand, when I was playing lots and I've always been playing lots of modded Minecraft, but before I really started playing GregTech or actually even started playing on this channel at all, um, I did everything on demand, and I did everything on demand very poorly. So I had really bad experiences with just going straight on demand. So I've always tried to stay away from that with the passive everything idea. But I do want to play GTNH at some point. I think that would be a fun challenge for me to do. It's sort of just like the thing you do if you're into GregTech as you attempt GTNH at one point. And I wouldn't do that on my own, but GTNH also does on-demand infrastructure rather than passive infrastructure. Obviously, we'll still do chemical lines, and there'll be things that will be done on passive, but many things won't. So that'll be a change going forward, and that'll be a fun challenge to do, I think. Oh, it looks like it ran out of metal girders, which is odd because I gave it more than enough than it told the material checklist told me. I actually noticed that problem is the material a couple of other blocks ran out even when I had enough in the checklist, so I don't know what that was all about. Um, but that should be fine. It won't be a long fix. I still actually do have to build a wiring platform down under here. I just when I was designing these things in creative mode, I finished the actual farm itself, and I was like, ugh, I forgot to do a bottom. And then I was like, well, I can always figure that out later. I just need to get this thing started, and it was true. I did need to get this thing started, so I did. Um, Obviously, most of it is not functional. Half the farm is still not actually set up. I set up the farm last night specifically so I can show you guys what it would be like, as well as to stress test the throughput. And the answer is I need more stress units on these lines. But for now, this will be good enough because, again, like I mentioned, none of the engine, not very many of the engines are going to be running. I'm probably only going to turn on half of them at first, which is still a fuckload of power, but uh, not as much as it could do. In terms of stuff over here, well, that's like the big ticket items. Obviously, is the main base slowly coming together. In terms of over here, I actually removed the big old tree farm. There was a weird issue where the server crashed funny while the tree farm was in motion, and when I came back on, the tree farm arm had frozen, so it converted itself back to blocks, but it also had accidentally duplicated itself, like right next to each other, so the whole thing just kind of gunked up. And I didn't really feel like fixing it because we had a few 100,000 logs, and I was like, I don't care anymore. No, all this stuff is gonna have to get moved. It's gonna have to get put somewhere else. I might not even use create farms for that. I don't know. Um, because we do have like greenhouses, for instance. Oh, wow. You have, oh, this is for mystical agriculture, I think. Uh, we could actually hear it. You know what? Like, we can make this stuff in tree greenhouses as well. And one thing is because we're going to be using a lot of mangrove wood, I'm going to start making or I want to farm mangrove trees instead. And these are really obnoxious to farm with the create farm, which was one of the problems I was having, which is why I'm farming them by hand, because it was really, really obnoxious to the point where the farm really couldn't do it automatically with all the roots it was creating. So we're gonna have to run these mangrove logs in tree houses, or these tree greenhouses, which um well, which is gonna require like new areas anyway, right? So this I just kind of tore it all up, and I was like, I'm gonna build something different anyway. Um, let's see, anything else over here? I mean, obviously I'm into MV more seriously than I was last time. Last video we have actually some pretty serious MV infrastructure over here. Okay, when I say pretty serious, I mean I have a lot of machines. Um, I've also started to make ME components. We have a lot of ME components actually. Let's see. Oh, I can't search planar logistics. Processor. We have a ton of these logic processors and calculation processors. Um, these are pretty expensive. They're not too bad, but they are more expensive than they would be in, say, a regular pack, which is duh. It's GregTech. Um, like printed engineering circuits require these diamond skystone alloy ingots, which need to be EBF'd. They can also be ABS'd actually. I believe they can be ABS'd. No. Huh. I thought they could be ABS. I believe some of them can. Or it's actually, you know what it is? Yes, they can be ABS. It doesn't make the molten form, so it doesn't actually need a vacuum freezer. That's what it is. Anyway, so this stuff takes, skystone, liquid skystone, and diamond dust, and then you make the ingots. And then you make these into plates, and then you use these for the print processors. Skystone is for the forming press for logic. You need silicon plates for the printed silicon, and then you need Certus quartz alloy for the calculation processors. So they're just a few extra steps. So they're not like particularly expensive. They're just a little bit more time consuming, which is fine. Um, but yeah, so we're looking pretty good. We're going to be getting into AE pretty soon. I just have to actually get around to setting everything up. I wanted to set the big power infrastructure system up first because that's what the AE would have done initially. So I wanted that stuff there, especially since I just really wanted to get this stuff. I really wanted the power infrastructure done. It's kind of crazy to have power that requires AE to work before actually even setting up AE. But I knew these things were going to be uh, actually, I know I mentioned like how expensive they were, but that's just in terms of how much stuff we needed, rather than the components themselves being expensive. Like most of the stuff was just copper, and we had a absolute fuckload of copper. Obviously, well, we do not have much less copper now. Um, I could still process a bunch of this copper ore as I did like sieve. I set up like 10,000 gravel to sieve automatically with our hand sieving setup over there. Well, automated sieving setup. Um, I never really ended up going with mechanical sieves. I just never really felt like building them in the end because I knew that we were going to be moving base at some point, and to set up a processing system just to tear it all down didn't really feel useful to me, especially since how easy it was to just batch huge inventories worth of ingots. I just felt like I really wasn't saving any time there. Which generally it's been told to me that the advice is if you're trying to save resources versus time, it's usually better to save time with something more expensive. Um, So that's ended up what I ended up doing. I don't know if like building the mechanical sieve versus using this saves more time. I think using this saves more time because this was a lot shorter and easier to set up than all the mechanical sieves and setting up a bunch of filters and crap and stuff, um, as well as all the resources that would go into setting up the mechanical sieves. But this was good enough and it works well enough. So uh, these by the way, these Steam multi-blocks have been absolutely goated. Have a bunch of stuff that I have to move as well. Oh, I did actually end up setting both of these things to MV, I believe. Actually, I guess this one is not MV. Why aren't you pulling gravel? Are you out of gravel? Oh, apparently you're no longer extracting for some reason. Anyway, um, this one actually does Certus quartz. The other one I didn't change because I didn't really feel like it. But this one produces enough Certus quartz for us to really care about. We have tons and tons and tons of Certus quartz. Nether quartz is more of the problem. I did sieve a bunch of sand last night, so we're doing okay on that. We do have. I basically just need to sit down and actually make all the AE components. We have pretty much everything we need for that. The controller itself requires the Diamond Skystone alloy, which we have, the processors, which we have. We actually have the Fluix frames as well. We even haven't like I legitimately just haven't even crafted the ME controller. Which here we'll just oh we have the ingots. We don't have the plates. Oh, we have the plates right here. Here, we'll craft it on camera. Boom. ME controller. We did it. We will soon be moving into the AE age, which will be really, really nice. I'll be able to actually do shit automatically instead of just moving shit around by hand, which is going to be fantastic. But with the beginning of AE means we're going to have to decide about how we want to do our AE infrastructure. And the answer to that is eventually we're going to be moving into P2Ps for ME P2Ps once the base grows. However, we're not going to do that right now because it's really expensive to set all that stuff up, and there's also really no need to do that. We're on 4x channels, so a dense cable does 128 channels. So with a single dense cable, we can do a lot. So I don't want to, have to build have to tear out my A system once it comes time to do the like switching to P2Ps. So the idea of how we're gonna do it is here. Let me grab some like building blocks, I guess. What would be nice here? We'll just use planks. So when it comes to P2P stuff, you need two controllers. You need an upper controller and a lower controller. And the lower controller controls like the actual controls the actual P2P devices themselves. You have like an interim controller. So the interim controller would be like down here. And then we'd have the main controller, which would be like the mother computer, I guess. That would be the big one, where everything would actually be read from, for example. This one, the big one would be up here, right? And it would be a big processor with tons and tons of channels because those would be where all the devices would be connecting to. And then we'd have a smaller controller down here that would be for controlling the individual P2P devices. So this would use far fewer channels. When it comes to when I start with the ME system, I will be building the lower controller first because I won't have to move that. Because if I, let's say, build the upper controller first and connect everything through there, I'll have to tear out all of the AE infrastructure in order to switch everything over to P2P channels, which will simply not happen. That will not be viable. Or it will not be an enjoyable experience, I should say. It's Minecraft. Technically, everything is viable if you're willing to sit there and put in the work for it and prepare properly for it. But honestly, that just would be an absolute travesty to do. So instead, we're going to be smart and we're going to build the lower controller first, since we won't have to move that. I think that would be fine off the top of my head. It's hard to say for sure. Well, I guess actually in the end it would be the same, wouldn't it? You'd still have to switch over from direct device channels to P2Ps. Though actually it might be more doable since you could bypass a bunch of stuff. I don't know, like you'd switch, like you could have the device channels on this controller and then you could do P2Ps and then you could swap everything out. Um, that would be doable. But anyway, the idea is we'll build the lower controller first. We'll run devices off that first. It's actually possible maybe I'll just go ahead and start trying to do P2Ps and build two controllers or whatever. I don't know what ME2 P2Ps cost. That's not expensive. That's something we could do. So I guess that's something I'm going to have to think about is how I want to design the initial AE infrastructure. Um, so there's big questions with that. Obviously, I won't do the full size controllers initially because that's just extra power we don't need to spend on them. But yeah, so this is the fun part of Planet, or of modded Minecraft, is when you start getting into. I should say all of it's the fun part, but this is a new fun part, a part that I really enjoy. When you start getting into a Planet Logistics and you get to ask the ask and answer the big questions about AE architecture, about how you're going to move going forward, at least in this base and stuff. And obviously this will be the final base. I'm not going to be building a second base like you would in GTNH, where you build multiple bases as you go up through voltage tiers. You build an MV base and then maybe an HV base and then an AE base or whatever. Or like in Three Folds, 3TPs with Random Potato and Touge, which I've been watching in the background as I do all this stuff. They just kept with their first base until they managed to get to AE in the personal dimension. But yeah, let's see. I don't think there's probably too much else Uh, yeah, I think that's probably about it that I've got. Oh, actually, over here, I swapped over to Igneous Extruders. These are a little bit faster than the stone barrels I had set up before previously, as well as they're far more upgradable with the various upgrade kits. Like, their upgrade kits for LV, MV, HV, and EV. And LV means they all run at the same speed, they just produce more. Like, in the same amount of time, the Igneous Extruder produces 6 cobblestone rather than 1. Unfortunately, it's still not fast enough to keep up with the demand of all the crushers and stuff. But it wouldn't be too expensive to upgrade all that stuff or add more. They're really not that expensive. Um, we also have andesite as well as skystone over here working. Oh, yep, and andesite has caught up and bypassed skystone because it's faster. Um, this is because obviously we need andesite for andesite alloy, and I am not going to be looking for pebbles anymore. That's just not going to happen. I'm not going to do that manual labor when I can have machines do it for me. So this works perfectly, and we have lots of that stuff. Um, I believe the void miner, it looks like it's backed up on ores, perhaps. I don't know what your problem is. Why you've turned off. Are you out of... No? Oh, yes, you're out of lubricant. Because you're out of creosote. Oh, I probably broke this. I know what I did. I'll have to go fix that later. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably about it. I don't have too much other stuff to say other than I've been processing a lot more of the liquid stuff you get from the void extractor for some stuff. Actually, magnetite dust has been really important. The magnets for the engines that you need, like the magnetite blocks, actually require an absolute monstrous amount of magnetite. Uh, so for each magnetite block, you need 4 magnetite dust, and it's 4 magnetite blocks for 2 fluctuated magnetite, which are 8 times better than the default ones. So it's absolutely worth upgrading these things as soon as possible. And then it's fortunately it's just 1-to-1 for the large neodymium magnets, which are 3 times better. Which we will be using eventually. But in order to get the maximum power output on the powerhouse, we need like 500 of these, which is like almost 2.3k neodymium ingots, I think, off the top of my head. It's quite a lot. Technically, we can make a neodymium ingots at this stage, but I really wouldn't want to just because the rates would be really bad. And even though we have tons and tons of rare earth, it's just I don't really want to do that right now, especially when it's not really all that necessary. Eventually, we'll probably start this at HV or maybe EV. I believe probably closer to HV. I still don't remember. I know you need uh, neodymium rods for something. Magnet rods. Oh, it's for EV motors. So we'll have to start this at HV then. So that'll be post AE effectively. Once we get everything moved over to Applied Energistics, and then start working on some on-demand infrastructure, well, some other crap, we'll be good to go. But I have said that's all I have for you guys today, like 4 times at this point. So I mean it for real, guys. That's it. That's all I've got. I'm really sorry for for baiting that. But yeah, we're looking really good. Got lots of progress done. I'm excited for the next week and where this pack will go. Lots of building to do, lots of fun questions to ask and answer. So yeah, I hope you guys have had a good week. My week has been exceptionally good. Obviously, gotten lots of stuff done. I'm just feeling better about myself. I don't know what it is, but you know what? I'm just feeling good, which is very nice. So, uh, all right. So I hope you guys have had a good week, and I hope you guys have a good upcoming week, and I will see you all again next week.